welcome you back to In Focus. Now, mediation is key to resolving conflicts worldwide. In Africa, mediation is underway to bring peace to the Niger Delta in Nigeria, and it was mediation that ended the North-South conflict in Sudan, paving the way for the recent cessation referendum. Though the practice has been dominated by men, women are now demanding a stake in it too.
The SASA has given me a message for this group. The SASA say, inquire from our guests. Is it too much to ask to support women in mediation? The SASA answers no.
Ruth Caesar of Liberia is one of 21 women mediators from around the world invited to Washington by the Institute for Inclusive Security to advocate for more women representation in peace efforts. At a recent luncheon, the Institute's chair, Swaney Hunt, used Sudan as an example of the lack of recognition women get as mediators.
All across the country, they are mobilizing. They're organizing across the conflict lines. In spite of that, there are no women at the senior level in the negotiating teams or in the mediation teams. And there's no consultation by the parties with scores of women's networks.
But recognition of women as effective mediators is slowly building momentum. United Nations Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs, Lynn Pascoe, quotes UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's words about empowering women.
He said, take any issue, climate change, development. When women are part of that vision, the world sees better results. We attach great importance to increasing women's participation in the resolutions of conflicts. We're actively working in our department to bring this approach along in the mainstream.
Political crises, such as the 2007 post-election conflict in Kenya, was mediated by former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. But women say they also had a role in ending the conflict that took the lives of more than 1,000 people. Alice Nderetu served as an officer working for human rights at the time in Kenya.
We were working behind the scenes, trying to get people to disarm, trying to get people to the table to speak to each other. There was lots of negotiating with the Kofi Annan team when it came on board to ensure that civil society and the private sector came on board and that they were involved in the drafting of the peace agreement.
Stella Sabiti of Uganda has mediated conflicts around the world for more than 30 years. Her first attempt at mediation was during the rule of former Ugandan President Idi Amin. She recounts her run-in with some of his soldiers at her university campus in Kampala.
They broke into my room, they dragged me out, and with the use of the AK-47, the butt of the gun, they hit me in the back. They hit me, they kicked me, they did everything. When they quieted down, I asked again, what did your wife cook for you last night? So I continued that, going, asking the same question, until they quieted down and one of them decided to answer, and another one answered.
The diversity of women attending this conference is proof of the fragile state of peace worldwide, but many of them say they believe they have an important role to play.
I would like to see a disarmament and demobilization, reintegration output from a peace agreement mediated by a woman. I would like to see, is the emphasis more on reintegration? Is it the emphasis less on issues like power sharing?
Women are able to do many things at the same time, and why can't we be allowed to bring that into this field? So we are saying we are taking this field.
These women are able to listen and listen and listen. And here's an important last one. They check their egos at the door.
Well, joining me now in the studio here for more discussion on women mediation is Florence Iheme, a member of the ECOWAS Commission in Nigeria and, of course, a native of Nigeria. And Ms. Florence Iheme, it's such a pleasure to have you here in the studio with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. So obviously, as I mentioned, you're one of the 21 women mediators who were here at the invitation of the Institute for Inclusive Security. What has this trip been about?
Well, as you rightly say, we are 21 women from 20 different countries invited by the Institute for Inclusive Security for a 2-week colloquium, which has involved spending a week in Cambridge, attending classes on inclusive security, basically to interrogate why women are not part of mediation teams, especially at the formal level, and to sort of discuss the advantages that women can bring, the value that women can bring to mediation teams.
Now, I was reading a UNICEF study which shows that in the past 20 years, only 3%, less than 3% of women signatories are on peace agreements. Why is that? Is that because maybe there's a resistance to women being mediators, or there are just not enough women who are interested in becoming mediators?
I would think that there are enough women in the mediation field generally, but quite often you find that those women are working at the local levels, but it is really at the more formal level, track one, that you don't find a lot of women. And I think partly the reason for this is that the areas from which mediators are usually combed, political holders of political offices, especially at the highest level, ministerial positions, ambassadorial positions, and generally you find proportionately less women in those fields. No. But I think there are many female mediators at the lower local levels.
And obviously the push is to get them on the track one, as you say, right up top. Now, there are a lot of plans, it seems, on the table. As we heard Mr. Pascoe from the UN say, they are trying to integrate women. What are the challenges in bringing women further up at the top level of mediation? Say where we see the former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, where we see the former South African President Thabo Mbeki, who are mediating at very crucial, very significant places in mediation.
One of it is what I just said, the positions that women hold generally in politics and in top other government positions. And secondly, I think there is a tendency that when people are combing for mediators, it's usually by word of mouth, people that they know. So this is the old boys network, as it were. So one of the things we are trying to do is to encourage the DPA of the United Nations, the Department of Political Affairs, which is working in collaboration with UN Women to have a roster of mediators to include women who are known to be good mediators, either at the local level. So to do that, but also to link the local mediation, mediators, the female mediators at the local level, to link them with this more formal level of mediation. This is what the program is all about, basically.
Now, we still are operating in a very male-dominated society across Africa, as we see a lot of the mediations, just to give an example, in Zimbabwe, in Kenya, those conflicts that needed mediation were done by men, but also on the receiving end, there are men players too.
Right.
How receptive do you think they will be to a woman mediator? Say you come to a case like Zimbabwe and you're trying to negotiate between President Mugabe and Mr. Tsvangirai. How likely is it that they will be receptive to a woman?
Well, I think, generally there's going to be a lot of some resistance because some of the arguments we've had over the last few weeks is that when you're negotiating peace, it's usually the conflicts, the parties at conflicts that you try to get together, and usually these are men. So they really don't know how getting a female mediator to negotiate with, say, so-called rebel groups, will, be advantageous to the process. But I think the thing is understanding the values that women bring as mediators to negotiations. I think that we have different ways of approaching issues. We are more conciliatory. We have our ways in terms of trying to soften situations, especially when you approach a deadlock, a stalemate, like we have in Cote d'Ivoire right now. I think that if women were to be given a chance to be part of the mediation team, they are likely to make some difference.
And I guess also, as Ms. Hunt said, the Ambassador Sweeney Hunt, women leave their egos at the door.
Exactly.
It's an important criteria, I guess.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much. Florence Iheme, a member of the ECOWAS Commission of Nigeria, and she's joining us here on In Focus. It's a real pleasure to have hosted you.
Thank you very much
for
having me.
Thank you.